Good morning, George Hepworth, Grover Park Consulting. For the past several weeks, I've been struggling with performance problems in the Lander Trail Foundation online searchable database catalog, that is. It turns out that ultimately it was a bad design decision I made at the very beginning, one of the very first design decisions I made that proved to be the root cause of that problem. I finally bit the bullet, acknowledged that as a longtime Access developer, I knew how to do it right. I had been lured into attempting to use one of the features in PowerApps, which, while it is a very handy thing, isn't exactly the right way to go about loading large record sets. I had tried things like using named formulas to load the initial record set faster. I had tried collections, various ways of creating collections to improve load times and search times by putting the data source into an online in-memory temporary table. All of that proved to be futile. The basic design decision, which we all know from years of experience with Access, is what is often referred to as the classic client-server design. The rule of thumb is never load more records than you absolutely have to load for the task at hand. Let me show you what I mean by referring not to the Lander Trail Foundation, but to a little sample application that I created to illustrate the problem, except for the number of books in the record set. 351 in my personal library at this point, as opposed to 1,929 in the Lander Trail Foundation. I chose it because it will illustrate the problem without bogging us down. The basic design is a gallery with an input text box. Drop out of runtime, look at the screen. We have a text input box and a gallery with some records being displayed in the gallery. The way we populate this gallery is the same way I was originally populating the gallery in the Lander Trail Foundation. We use the search function against the table. We coalesce the text in the input field with a value that's impossible. My thinking at the time was if it's impossible to match any of the titles, it will return none of them. And that's very true. That works. And that's one of the nice things about the search function. It's a contains search. If I type the letter A, it will find the letter A in any position within the full title of any book. That works really, really well on record sets, well, 350 in this case. As the number of records increases, the problems begin to exhibit themselves. And I'll show you that now. Watch what happens. What I want you to focus on here is not so much the delay itself, which is noticeable, and you will see the spinning circle indicating that it is running, but the fact that each time I type a letter, that search is invoked again and again and again and again. On a smaller record source like this, 351, it's noticeable. As the Lander Trail Foundation table of publications went over 1,000 and then 1,500 and then to 1,900, this became extremely noticeable. On days when the internet connection was not good, it simply timed itself out more than once. A, N, D. What I'm focusing on is not the fact that these are very short delays, but the fact that there is a delay and that it is incurred each time you type an additional record, or an additional letter. If I'm looking for Yellowstone, it finds the one title with the word Yellowstone, but that search is invoked each time a letter is added or removed. And again, it's noticeable here, and I'm using a small record source so that it's not unbearably slow. In a larger record source, that is an intolerable delay. And it has to do with the fact that we're looking at the entire table, 1900 records. We have to look at each letter in each title in each record, one at a time, and we repeat that search each time an additional letter is invoked. As more records are added with longer titles, that becomes painfully slow. What's the alternative? How did I resolve this problem? Let me show you that now. I have returned to the Land Trail Foundation Online Searchable Database Catalog. Let's select Manage Publications. I replaced the original text input, which was here, with a combo box which functions like the categories and authors combo boxes functioned. It displays all of the titles in our catalog, 1,929 titles. As an aside, the main reason I avoided this originally, or one of the reasons I avoided this, I was looking at this and thinking nobody wants to scroll thousands of records looking for a single title. So I went with the search option. As it turns out, the search option avoided the problem of having to scroll, but brought with itself an even more severe problem, as we just discussed. We can re-implement the search within the combo box itself, which is a function that PowerApps does support. Let's look for the word trail. There are a lot of titles in this book with the word trail. I haven't selected any of them yet. I have simply asked the combo box to filter itself. That means I have not yet made any additional calls back to the database on the server. That is a crucial difference in the way this performs as opposed to the searching text box. By delaying the start of the search until after I have filtered the list and made one or more selections, I avoid the repeat calls to search, 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 search. It becomes a single search invoked after I have made my selection. The first one is made, my second one is made, my third one is made, and so on. I can add to the filtering a selection of an author, and let's just take this first one again. I can do a contained search on author's name, so we'll do June, and we'll get one matching name. That refilters down to a single book which has the word trail in the title with the author whose last name is June. We can further filter by category, and we see only one optional category. So we'll take historic sites, and it remains as it was because the search did not narrow or expand. The filtering is AND filtering. We filter against these titles and this category and this author. If I remove the author selection, it runs the search again, but it does not change anything because there's only one item with the word trail in the category historic sites. If I remove one or more titles, and I will simply start here and eliminate them. As you can see, there is a remnant of that performance hit that comes from a rather large data set. However, I find it a lot more manageable or acceptable or livable than the delay we get from that contained search. So now we have two books with the category historic sites. This one, and actually it looks like it's two copies of the same book. That may well be a duplicate. I will have to look into that. As it turns out, I may have done a little troubleshooting along the way. That may in fact be a duplicate. This is what you call a serendipitous event. Clear them all and it returns to 0 books selected. I don't want to harp on the performance any further. I think this is an acceptable compromise. The delay is short enough, regardless of how many combinations or which combinations I apply. And the multiple selection items in my combo box for titles, although it's less fluent perhaps than the open-ended search, it is certainly doable. And it returned a number of books with the word Oregon, because we're focusing on the Lander Trail, which is an offshoot of the original Oregon Trail. Each of these combo boxes creates in PowerApps the functional equivalent of a filtered subquery in the Access world. A saved query with a parameter will return only a subset of records. If it's dynamic, wherein the criteria is set at runtime, it returns different records each time, but it's always a subset, a smaller, more manageable subset of the entire records. The subset is empty when we start because we have removed all of our filters. We create a small collection based on the items selected in the publication search title combo. Same is done for categories. We create a small filtered collection based on the one selection in our category. And the same is true again for authors. We create a small filtered collection which includes only the items selected in that combo box. These could be altered to allow multiple selections, just like title. I haven't yet done that. I'm going to test this out in production for a while before I decide if we want to open it up and make it really complex for users. This should be adequate, I think, but we'll see. I will put the code for these things along with the code which filters our gallery itself in the description. Collection publications is a master query in the Access world, which is filtered against the 3 subqueries. You can think of it functionally the same way. It's sorted on a PubSort title, or the PubSort field. If you haven't watched my other videos, you may not realize that PubSort is a calculated field which removes it leading a, an, and the, so it sorts only on the first significant word in the title. So instead of filtering on the Oregon Trail, or excuse me, instead of sorting on the Oregon Trail, it sorts on Oregon Trail, comma, the. That's how that works. It's a lot simpler than it was originally, but that's only partly because I'm using a different approach. The other part is that I have moved the majority of the calculation to this reusable code page. And you can watch my other video, and I'll put the link to the other video in which I talk about using code repeatedly in PowerApps. Although it's not a natively available function, there is this technique which allows us to simulate reusable code. I'll quickly step through it here, but I will not try to explain it in detail. I'll simply post the code in the description for this video and allow you to copy, paste, and modify to suit your own applications. First thing we need to do is make sure we're working with the most current data in the publications table. We do that by refreshing it. Then we clear out whatever was in the prep collection. You'll see why I knew you needed the prep collection in a minute. The prep collection starts by bringing in columns from the underlying table, filtered against the publication titles in this sub-collection. If the only thing we've passed in is a publication title, that's the only filtering we're going to do. It will bring back all of those publications where the ID is in that collection. However, if we send in only a category, and this section determines the logic there, which category was sent in. There's our greater than 0 that tells us this is the one that sent in the value. Then we filter against the genre ID, and genre ID and category ID are interchangeable in this application. We pick only the first item in the collection generated by that combo box. If I were to change it so that we'll accept multiple categories, this would then be the same logic as this. Instead of filtering on the first, we would just go and accept anything in that collection. Again, if we pass in only the creator, then the filtering is done against the creator or author selected in that combo box. If we pass in both a title and a category, then we have to filter against both combo boxes, and the AND is the concatenator that says it has to pass this criteria and this criteria. If we pass in the title and an author, we filter against the title and the creator combo boxes. If we pass in a creator and an author but not a title, we filter against the creator and the category. And if we pass in all three, then we have to filter against the title and the creator and the category or genre. It sorts the results by the pub sort field and then collects this interim preparatory collection into my full collection. Again, rather than wade through all this code and explain in excruciating detail how each step works, I'll give you that high-level look. I'll provide the code, and hopefully you'll have an opportunity to work through it in a PowerApps application of your own and figure out how to implement a similar client-server approach in which you use parameterized sub-collections or parameterized queries in the Access world to aggregate and then filter a small subset of records into the master collection, or in Access world, master query, which returns only that very small subset of records to our display form or our display gallery in the PowerApps world. I like to think that we can build better applications if we rely on the tried and true techniques and design approaches that we know always work regardless of the environment in which we're creating our applications. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.